If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 260 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Welcome to what's sure to be the greatest episode in the history of episodes. And I'm not stretching the truth. Well, maybe I'm stretching, but only because Alex Hyde-White, the original Reed Richards, is here from Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. That's right. We're going deep into that and Alex's book in the volume, My Life in Film and TV. A lot of great stories coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, Jan Karam was my guest last week. She's awesome. She's an awesome comedian. She guested on one of the most iconic Seinfeld episodes ever, where she was voted Seinfeld's #1 TV girlfriend. So check that conversation out, but not before you check out this conversation with Alex Hyde-White. We're talking about Pretty Woman, the toy, Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, the unreleased 1994 movie based on the Fantastic Four that's been pirated since 1994. I have my own copy. I've always been fascinated with this, and it was an honor to talk to Alex all about it and a lot more. Tons of great stories coming at you right now. All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest, actor, author of In the Volume, detailing his 40-year career. Loved him in Pretty Woman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Biggles' Adventures in Time, and of course, the original Mr. Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Alex Hyde-White.
Wow, I was in all those movies, wasn't I? Thank you.
You were. I wanted to start with the most important question up front, which is, in Pretty Woman, how many times did Julia squeeze the snails? How many takes did that?
Yeah, they didn't really know how to do it. We had a 3-day shoot at the restaurant, and it was walking in, establishing, and round and round. So it was plenty of time, 2.5 days probably. And when they got to the snail gag, I think Gary ended up just saying, all right, now throw it. And so once you had that, then you sort of went back a bit and did whatever kind of sleight of hand needed to squeeze. But like I say, we had plenty of time. And, as you know, if at first you don't succeed squeezing a snail, try and try again.
Exactly. It was a good scene in Pretty Woman. Ralph Bellamy, you, Julia Roberts, and of course, Richard Gere.
It was Ralph's last film, and Gary was worried about the scene. He thought he didn't quite know if the audience would get it. And so we had some time after the third day, and he had me sit across from Richard and just sort of do a bunch of wild lines, exposition. And some of them made it and some of them didn't. But I remembered actually saying to Richard, what are you, the Wolf of Wall Street? And Gary, oh, I like that, Wolf of Wall Street. He didn't use it, but Scorsese did, I think, a few years ago. So there was a lot of times when there's a lot of good material that isn't used. It's a way of sort of illustrating how good the film was, because it was very much an intuitive shoot in the hands of Gary, the director. He had a good feel for it, for the material. And of course, he cast it beautifully with Julia and Richard.
It's a classic. When I was watching it, your polo scene, I was thinking, oh, Alex has 2 solid pieces of swag. He could have some kind of Fantastic Four shirt and then also the polo shirt, the #2.
Yeah, they didn't let me take the polo shirt, but I got the boots.
Well, you got to take the wins where you can get them, I guess.
Yeah, you learn very early on, as I say in the book, you learn very early on that the most important people at the studio are the guard at the front gate, and then of course, the cameraman. And if you can get along with the props and wardrobe, then they're quite happy to give you souvenirs.
That's awesome. One of the things I read was that you saw Tom Petty 2 weeks before he passed away. I live with the regret that I didn't see him the last time he was in Michigan, and it was been the only chance.
You'd never been to a Petty concert?
You know, it was one of those things where I was like, I was supposed to go to a Petty concert and I couldn't go. So my friend went. And then he ended up getting block seats. You know, the seats were obscured. And so we ended up getting free Don Henley tickets. So I ended up seeing Don Henley as a result. And then later, I think maybe I just wasn't paying attention. And like, so the big anniversary tour came around and the people we wanted to go with are like, it's expensive. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll see him next time.
Yeah, it ended up being, it was expensive in the end. You know, that's like a contest, you know, a first prize is one ticket to Don Henley. Second prize, 2 tickets to Don Henley. There's no comparison. Petty was great. You know, I'm of an age where I started in 78 to 80 under contract at Universal. And, you know, he was under contract at Universal at the same time. And, you know, he made a big deal out of it. But that's when really he started to come of age in live touring. And he was a quintessential American songwriter, you know, from Gainesville, Florida, but he really called LA his home. And he didn't have the California sound. He, you know, it was very unique. I felt that if you were a fan of sort of Southern culture, you were a fan of Petty. And if you were a fan of Northern culture, you were a Springsteen fan. And you couldn't really be both. It was very interesting. But I'd seen a lot of Tom Petty shows from when I was like 20 years old. Probably a couple dozen. But yeah, I was there in the last show because I got to know through golf, a golf friend of mine was Scotty Thurston, who was Petty's second guitar player for like the last 15 years. So, you know, I was with the band and we were friends and family for a long time. My boy, who's now 21, when he was 3 months old, he was actually in the wings at Santa Barbara, which is actually a very quiet place when you're in the wings on stage. But you're right. The cost was exorbitant. It was it was like $260 for the ticket. And I just went by myself at the Hollywood Bowl. It was the last show of the 6-month tour, something like that. And I remember my wife, Shelley, said, how was it? And I go, you know, I think I've seen my last Tom Petty show. And that was only because, you know, I just kind of grew up with the band and it's almost a way of almost growing out of it. It was so wonderful, but they were so great. But little did I know that I was absolutely right. And it was one of the things that helped me shut the door on LA, really, was Petty died, Will Smith slaps Chris Rock at the Oscars. They shut everything down. Casting became remote. And I sort of said, hey, wait a minute. This isn't Hollywood anymore. It's not a must stay. So a little over a year ago, we loaded up the truck and moved to Pensacola. All right, there's a good long story for you.
I loved every second of it. So, all right, so contract, go back in time. You're 18 years old, contract player, Universal Studios.
Yeah, I was 19, from 19 to 21. So that would have been, I was born in 59. So that would have been 78 to 80. Jaws, I think, was like, 76? Star Wars was 76, 77. It was a great time to be a part of American movies. I wanted to fly jets in space, and that's what they created, the original Battlestar Galactica, to do that. And they were hiring boys to fly, and I ended up being one of them. It only lasted, I think, maybe a season, maybe not even. Did 3 episodes, I think. Bounced around, did a lot of Quincy shows, some other sort of TV movies. It was 2 years before a damn writer's strike. Went on strike for 6 months. Or no, it was the actor's strike then. But it was a great way to get started because I felt like I belonged. And it was a lot of fun. And it makes up a good early portion of my book. And funnily enough, I spoke to Jamie Lee Curtis about, a couple of months ago, because she'd come in to my audio studio to do something. And I hadn't connected with her in ages. And she called when she was done. We had a good catch up and I sent her the book. And she had vivid memories. And she said if it hadn't been for getting a contract, she was a contract player at the same time. She said to me, if I hadn't got that contract, I don't know if I would have gone into the business. You know, here she is. She's like the most likely to succeed. She won herself an Oscar, which was amazing, which was wonderful. So, you know, longevity, but it was a heck of a way to get started. It was close to being old Hollywood. It really was.
Did you grow up wanting to be an actor? I know your father was an actor as well.
No, you know, it's a bit of both. I mean, you know, it's like if you grow up the son of a pharmacist, do you want to be a pharmacist? No, you just want to steal drugs. I mean, you know, I was comfortable with the job of an actor, seeing it, recognized the sort of off-stage work that went into the on-stage kind of celebration. But I didn't like the lifestyle. It seemed very manufactured. Little did I know that once I got to be 16 years old out of high school in Palm Springs, because I graduated pretty early, which wasn't that difficult in Palm Springs, but I was a precocious fella. that most of the world seemed to be slightly misrepresented. And so I fell back on I went to Georgetown thinking, oh, I like government. I like the classical architecture. I like that thing. And then I realized it was more about celebrity and sort of the star culture and being close to the flame and all of that bit. LA was the desert. California was my home. And I just thought very similar skill sets. So I left Georgetown at age 17 after 1 year and never looked back, So technically I'm a college dropout, but it also put me on a path of never-ending learning, which being an actor is a wonderful thing because, as you know, I'm half English, I'm half American, and half something else. I enjoy the research. I enjoy the preparation. I enjoy the off-stage, sort of outside of the lines work of storytelling, which I've now incorporated into audiobooks, which is terrific. I love producing. So I couldn't see any other path really for myself, unless it was like real estate sales, which is predatory. And I did a bit of that. So personal empowerment, I suppose, was my thing. And I was just hoping I was going to be lucky enough to be able to stay at it. I had lots of peaks, several peaks, lots of valleys. That's what my book ended up not so much being. It was a celebration of my life in film and TV, not so much a celebration of my life, but a celebration of the film and TV and ancillary projects I've been a part of. But it was almost a survivor's tale a bit. It was interesting. It sort of it's a story about time in a way, spread over 43 years and how things sort of repeat. Very interesting world. The world that now we call pop culture and where everybody's a celebrity. And when I started out with one foot in that analog way, there was really no such thing as celebrities. You were famous because you were good at something and you were fairly well liked, or less you were infamous for all the wrong reasons. And now it seems such a crowded field that celebrity it's like a genus or a species of its own.
There's so many different paths now that didn't exist then, like TikTok or YouTube and stuff like that. And these people can become social media famous. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now my YouTube has become independent film. When I was in my 30s and 40s, I was lucky to produce a couple independent movies when there was still sort of a market there for it. And now a lot of films are made a micro budget and they're lucky to get distribution on YouTube nowadays, if you have a film of which I have two of them out actually on Amazon Prime or Netflix or Apple TV, it's considered a release. And, very rare film like Nope, which I had a little part in last summer, that's a big blockbuster studio release. But that used to be it. There were studio movies. There was no such thing, or a TV movie. And all of my work, except in the first 20 years, all of my work came in that old-fashioned way. Highlighted after 10 years in the business. When was Pretty Woman? 90. It was 89. It was released in 90. So I'd been in 10 years. I got my 10-year pin, was Pretty Woman. And that was 30 years ago? Just keeps getting better and better. It's almost like the original Fantastic Four, which is the opposite of Pretty Woman. An accidental flop that actually ended up being a heck of a good story, whereas Pretty Woman was an accidental hit that just keeps growing and growing. But there's a lot of similarity in the two, that they were made the old-fashioned way.
In the book, you talk about your father a lot, Wilfred. You never acted in the same scenes together, but you were in some Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers. You were in some of the same shows.
Yeah.
Did you at least get to you watch each other at work?
Well, I watched him a lot because, from my sort of seminal years as a young, sort of from the ages of 12 to 15, 16, we'd go on the road with him wherever he was doing a summer stock show or a play in England. And so, I really grew up in the theater. And yes, I would watch him, and he had a wonderful technique, but he also had a very, almost a superstitious, neurotic nervous system. And it was very hard for him to manage both. That kind of was a warning to me a bit. It was almost as if, I don't know, like some athletes or some tennis players, for instance. I play a lot of tennis. In order to get their best, they feel they have to make it difficult. Peter Sellers was like that as well, who was a wonderful English chameleon and was a great friend of Dad's. And so I was lucky to have a bird's eye view of talented characters such as Sellers and my dad, but they weren't normal people. They weren't regular people. My dad lived a long time, 88 years old, but it was, his last 10 years were sad. He was alone. I don't know if it was worth it. And Sellers died young, broken heart. It's such an attractive business that everybody wants to be, not everybody, God bless, I hope 90% of your audience are happy living their lives day to day, taking care of their families, because at the end of it all, I think even the very successful actors that I have come across, they value their life more if they have the trappings of normality, of normalcy. Getting out of LA, for me, was very interesting because it gave me now a perspective. I can see how the chase, sometimes it's all about the chase. I'm probably maybe working in the financial sector in New York too, is, you're always trying to go after where you think the power is, which is my original attraction perhaps to working in Washington. I mean, we're seeing things now because of instant news and instant opinion. We've substituted opinion for journalism, for reporting. And so we have a real hard time of discerning where a moderate point of view is about so many things. But it became so bad in Hollywood, in California. I joke when I say, Tom Petty died and Chris Rock got slapped for the Oscars and the governor shut down the state. Okay, well, something's going on. And I got out of it, and I was lucky because I feel like I get to live a life now that is more meaningful. And it's not just about the chase, hoping that something good happens. You can spend a lot of time, and this is, I think, the danger of this sort of culture of microculture of celebrity, is that we celebrate everything. I did this, I did that. I had a movie come out. The director tagged me on Facebook, so here I go, hey, I'm in a movie. But at least I said, hey, here's a really neat independent family film, a throwback to old indie. It was fun to be a part of it. So, I'm being hypocritical because, yes, I spread the word, but I try to put the work ahead of my achievement.
What's the name of that film?
Oh, it's called The Search for Tom Sawyer's Gold. It's one of these little things that you don't think twice of, except, you go and do your job. And it was the second time with producers. So they were good guys. I enjoyed them. It was a part that Val Kilmer was supposed to play, the wraparound sort of narrator, Mark Twain-ish character. And as you may know, Val had a wonderful one-man show that he put together about Mark Twain that I ended up seeing in Pasadena several years ago. And Val and I started out. We had our first play was together in '83 in New York. I always admired watching him.
Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. Thank you for your support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my conversation with Alex Hyde-White. We're going to talk a little bit more about Val.
There's an interesting character like Tom. He made it difficult on himself, but there was a time there that he was a Greek god in our business as a young actor, and he couldn't, of course, he couldn't play the part because he's physically unable now. So it was great to be able to step into that and do it. It was a Mark Twain kind of character, supposed to be the great-grandson of J.J. Harper, who was Samuel Clemens' friend. And so he's going to help you find Tom Sawyer's Gold by showing you the map kind of thing. And that was all I did. I spent a day doing these 4 or 5 scenes that they intersperse as the narrator. And then they sent me the trailer just a couple of days ago. And I looked at it and I go, my gosh, this looks great. And my agent says, oh, wow, we're so glad you're in a family film. And it's kind of like what I'm saying. The film business has become so populated now with almost anything because, you can make so much stuff that it's still hard to find. But, a good old-fashioned family film, it might end up being good. It was crazy. It's almost like going down the road and finding a $50 bill. It was lucky. And then the second film I got coming out is a nice film. It should be good. It's a Knives Out kind of murder mystery, a period mystery starring the wonderful Misha Bart, who was quite a starlet in her 20s. And now she's becoming a really nice leading character actress. She's sort of like a young Angela Lansbury in this Agatha Christie kind of film set in 1930s England, where I play sort of mysterious butler in a double part, classic Agatha Christie style, similar to what my dad played in 10 Little Indians. So, it's interesting, really, how things come around. I mean, I've got this Tom Sawyer film where I'm dripping from the magnolias, and then I'm the rather reserved upper crust butler who you make sure you don't piss off in the other film. And so, lo and behold, this one's called Invitation to a Murder. So I'm plugging 2 movies.
Awesome. So, yeah, I read in your book that you were friends with Val.
Yeah.
His documentary was incredible.
I'm so glad you read the book. Yeah. I saw that documentary. I wish it would have been more about his work, his career, He was a bright, bright light. Some wonderful, wonderful stuff. I mean, how he backed his dad on a failed real estate deal and things like that. At least my father didn't really have an estate or much to mess up. It was very interesting. I learned things about Val that I didn't know. I knew he was from Chatsworth. He was the grandnephew of the poet. Was it Joyce Kilmer? A wonderful American poet in the 30s.
You mentioned Peter Sellers in the book. You quick story how Peter
Yes.
Sellers called the house and you answered, and he wanted to talk to your dad to ask him to be in a movie. And it was just a funny thing to picture in my head. And I was like, "Hey, Dad, Peter's on the phone."
I mean, exactly. Yeah. I was living in a little apartment near Universal, I think my second year of the contract, and the phone rang. And of course, I was downstairs sleeping on the sofa because my dad was doing something here in Hollywood and or auditioning for something or negotiating for something. So he's upstairs, and at least it was a little townhome, and the phone rang. Punch. Yeah. It's Peter Sellers. Hey, Peter, listen, I'm on a yacht in the south of France, so we might be sort of having trouble here with the line. I might ring off any minute. Is your dad there? Yeah, hold on. Dad, it's Peter. I mean, yeah, literal. It was funny.
You mentioned your butler, and so I'm going to tie that to your dad being the chauffeur butler in The Toy, which you were in as well, I love that movie, The Toy. But I loved your story in the book about improving a line, saying you were from Detroit, actually.
Yes, that's right. Just an actor in Detroit. I don't know how to work a camera. And Jackie, oh, no, you know. And it was this huge shot. It was a set piece of a shot at the end of the day at the governor's mansion in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we were filming, where Pryor and Scotty Schwartz are in the race cars, and they come down and they trip all the wires that are holding the tents up for this big sort of fundraiser. And Gleason plays this local, big boss kind of character, and he's trying to find something on the governor or whoever the guy is, and I'm just the photographer. And in the script, he sort of, everything's moving. Okay, it's like a tracking shot. Everything is moving. Big shot. And he comes by to me, and I got my moment. He said, "Did you get the picture?" And there's no dialogue. I go, and I just figured, fuck it, he can keep moving. I go, "No, I'm just an actor from Detroit. I really don't know how to, I'm expecting, just keep on going. It's no big deal." And he stops the bloody shot. And that's me. And Dick Donner jumps up from behind. "Alex, what the hell are you doing?" So the prop guys, they didn't care because, Gleason, he was one of these guys, I'm telling you. He was Jackie Gleason. But people thought he was a pain in the ass to be around. And I guess by the time they got to this moment, they didn't care that the kid was making Gleason do it again. So they re-rigged the whole thing. We did the shot. He comes by and I just say, "Oh," or whatever, and we get the shot. And it's a wrap. It's a summer's day in Louisiana, so it's not going to get dark forever. And Dick Donner comes over to me. He says, "Alex, why don't you get a ride home with us?" So I'm in the motorhome with Dick Donner and Laz Kovacs and a couple other people. And Donner tells me this story about a young actor who made a name for himself because he was daring enough to improv on a war movie. And he explains the scene, and it's in the book, and it's Sinatra at the gangway, and the Jeep comes in, and bubblegum and a comic book, and the whole thing. And, it's just folklore. Apparently it was Steve McQueen. Okay. So I remember that story, and I put it in the book. I don't know whether, this is Hollywood, man. It doesn't have to be true, but it's a hell of a good story. And Dick Donner, the part where Donner says, "Come on, get a ride home with us," that's true. Laz Kovacs, the cameraman. I work with some wonderful camera people. They were laughing. They thought it was funny that I was messing with the big guy. I was just an actor from Detroit. How do I know get that? Those Nikon cameras are hard to use. Come on.
No, they are. It's near impossible.
That was an episode, and I named my chapters episodes, you see. And the episode was called Short Pants, because my parents' friend, a fellow named Howard Montgomery, who kind of was my mentor. He was kind of my Obi-Wan when my parents were AWOL for a few years, got me into golf, and was really a great mentor. I told him that story, and he said, "Gleason put the short pants on you." So that's what that means.
Your book is great, and I love how you wrote it. I love that you weren't afraid to kind of encapsulate the other things that were going on. It's not just about specific, just Alex. Like if you were working with someone, you could go off on a tangent about things that happened to other people and other things that were happening in culture at the time. It was a really unique way to write it. I like how you broke it into seasons and then those chapters that you mentioned kind of under there. It was really enjoyable. It's very different than I think any other kind of memoir that I've read. Really, really enjoyable.
I'm really happy to hear you say that. Thank you. I'm not important enough as an actor or well known enough as a celebrity with a small c to justify writing my memoir. So it really, I just wanted to remember these stories and put them down because a lot of them were just magnificent. And I was a part of them as an actor. I was a part of them when there was silence on the set, when the work was just growing, was sprouting forth. And some good, some bad, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. Just like this little quest for Tom Sawyer's Gold. It's all video these days. It's all digital information. In fact, they try to dirty up the picture to give it some character. And it's always been that way. It was whether it was 35 millimeter film or even when we were doing the Jordan Peele movie, they shot that thing on 65 millimeter and they were changing film reels almost every 2 shots. But the end result is the same. And that's what the wonderful sort of through line on the original Fantastic Four is. It may never have meant to be made. It may never have meant to be shown. But in between those two absolutes is the actual making of the film. And that film stock, if it's lit correctly, and most of it was, is going to be just as good and just as potentially good or bad as any other film that's being made that year. And that's when actors like myself and the other cast members, that's when we were happy to be there. And that's what shows in that film, whether the sets are shaky or the special effects is non-existent, it doesn't matter. There is a joy in the making of that film that is palpable. And that is why people like coming up to me when they see me at a convention or whatnot and tell me how they discovered it. That gives me as much satisfaction as when somebody says, boy, you were a real jerk in Pretty Woman. I go, well, no, wait a minute. That was Jason Alexander. Let's go back. Oh, yeah. Okay, wait a minute.
He was a real jerk, wasn't he, in that?
Yeah. Didn't do him any harm, though.
No. All right, well, since we're not meeting at Comic-Con, we're meeting here, allow me to share my story. So yes. I was aware of the Fantastic Four movie, and my big thing is I love going to Comic-Cons. Love Comic-Cons. Yes. You can kind of see my background. I got a bunch of stuff, and meeting the actors, getting the autographs, everything. And so I have in my hands, I showed it to you before, but I have the VHS tape, which is obviously a bootleg. It's on a T120 Maxwell, if that wants to impress anyone. Anyone can Google what that is. Anyway, everyone's like, what's a VHS tape?
A Maxell. Oh,
Maxell,
yeah.
It's nothing but the quality. And the sticker, which, is hand put on. It's handwritten, The Fantastic Four, live action movie.
$10.
Yeah, probably something like that. And so I watched it. I watched it again, actually, before we talked. I watched it on YouTube, though, because I don't even have a VHS player anymore.
No.
Now it just
you can get a DVD. You can get a DVD. There was actually Blu-rays made of it as well.
Oh, really?
All bootlegs. I get things sent every once in a while, but they're all bootlegs.
So I was interviewing Gail Ann Hurd recently.
Oh, wow. Good.
And she says during the interview, she goes, I don't know if you know this, but Roger Corman made a Fantastic Four movie. I'm like, Gail, know it? I got it in my basement. Knowing I'm talking to you in like a week or two.
Oh, good.
So let's talk about this movie. There's so much about it. I rewatched the movie and I rewatched Doomed because I had seen that a while ago. I'd probably seen that.
Yeah, did a good job with that documentary. Yeah.
Yeah, Doomed, the untold story of Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four. It's such a fascinating story. So they come to Roger Corman and Trauma Films. They need to get this movie made. Constantine Films needs to get it made or they lose the rights.
Yeah. I never really knew too much about the trauma angle. I mean, I'm sure, but that's true that we had to hurry up and start production before the end of the calendar year. So I remember the audition was sort of mid-November, and I think right either the day before or the day after Thanksgiving was the first day of filming. And we needed to start principal photography before the end of the calendar year, which was 1992.
When you got this role, what did it mean to you personally?
It's like winning a tournament. Only in this one, it was straight to the finals. The hardest part of getting work as an actor, particularly a young actor, is stringing together good auditions. You do the first audition can be quite easy because the stakes are low and it's just it's somebody wanting to champion you. And then they say, hey, this is good. Then you go to the second one, you meet somebody who's actually either written the show or in a position of authority. Hey, that's good. And then you start going to network or the director or whatnot. And the hardest thing, especially if you are a person who thinks that you need to control things, which is a lot of my book talks about that, the difference between influence and control. It can be very stressful. So I always liked independent film because I'm a very much a listen and respond kind of, I don't know whether I'm a visual or oral or I don't know, but I mean, it's words on paper. So maybe I'm visual. I think it's my experience growing up in the theater where everything only ever happens once. And the great rub about being, to quote, a successful theater actor so that the stage manager doesn't get on your butt every night when you're on the road is you got to do the show the same way. Well, why? Well, because everybody's relying. No, you see Peter O'Toole, you see Wilfred Hyde-White, you see these Richard Harris on stage. They might be doing Pygmalion, they might be doing Camelot or something. But no. You are watching that performance and that's only that and that night only, okay? So that to me is what film is about. I used to love auditioning for independent film because if I was right for something, it was like being in the finals and I was playing well. I said, whoa. And I suppose with Fantastic Four, compounded by their sense of urgency to cast, I know I walked out of that room, in hindsight, with the job offer. It might be that as simple as soon as I walked into the room, they were ready to offer it because it was right. It was like winning a tournament, but I only had to play one match. It's like the old actor's story. He comes home, he says, I got good news and I got great news. The wife says, what? What's the good news? He says, I got the part. She goes, well, what's the great news? I don't have to work tomorrow.
You were a great Reed Richards. Hashtag my Reed Richards.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
thank you.
You were.
The film was so minimized for so many years that I never even, in my mind, it was it was nothing. And that was a great shame because I loved being that character. It wasn't a stretch for me, seriously, because Reed did all the stretching, you see, and I just felt instinctively, since that script kind of dealt with the psychological or the metaphysical, or what's the word? It dealt with the interior life of these four smart, bright people, their shortcomings, their way of being. And Reed is just wanting to take care of everything, wanting always to be making sure everybody's safe, making sure everybody's fine. He's like an Amish father or something. Only he lives in a world where there is television and newspapers and there's modern world. And so I just felt that Reed's sort of stasis, his sense of being, was that he was extending himself to make sure everybody could do their best. And that's a very selfless quality. You're not really thinking about yourself. And I love that. I love that about the character. And I thought the dialogue was fun. It was typical sort of 1950s, there's a flying saucer in the sky kind of on the nose dialogue. But again, growing up in the theater, I wasn't afraid of any of this. It was a great part for me. Had it been released, would I have had a career as a low budget, adventure leading man? I don't know. There really wasn't such a thing. I mean, it was a one-time thing. And the fact here we are, over 30 years later, we are propagating the myth of it. This is one of those instances where when what is it? When the truth becomes the myth, you print the myth. I think that's in the book too. One
of the things I got out of watching Doomed was how important getting this was for all of you, winning lottery ticket, if you will, to become because I imagine this is the type of thing, these leading roles, when an actor gets them, it's a huge, huge deal. And this was rightfully so. Oh, the Fantastic Four, huge property. Marvel, a lot of buzz at the time, right? Cameron's talking about Spider-Man. This is early 90s. Wesley Snipes, Black Panther, Wes Craven, Doctor Strange, right? So this is going to fit right into it. And, you're Fantastic Four is the cornerstone of Marvel, right? And so when that kind of gets to the end where you learn, oh, maybe this movie was never even meant to be released. Nobody intended it. They just created it. I felt so bad for what was that emotional kind of cliff for all of you? Because it must have been forget that the movie got shelved. I'm sure that happens, but it was this seemed to be an emotional roller coaster for all of you as well. To be so close.
Well, movies don't get shelved. Scripts sometimes would get bought. You write a script, Fantastic Voyage or something, but they're going to already do one, but yours is pretty close. So they might option your script and they buy your script so that, there isn't a lawsuit. That used to happen. Films get made and then they either get released or they don't. They don't get shelved. They don't get purposely not released. And that's exactly where we fell with this film. It was good enough for Bernd Eichinger at New Constantine to bluff Fox by saying, and having Roger on ready to go. Roger, we did reshoots a couple months later, and we changed the ending a bit, or we just enhanced the ending. And Roger Corman wouldn't have spent $15,000 on reshoots if he knew that this movie was going to be zip. So a film being a disappointment happens more than a film being satisfying as an actor, particularly if you're in the leading role, which maybe half a dozen times. Supporting roles, A Pretty Woman, Catch Me If You Can, Nope. To be a part of those films are like the peaks. I refer to my life and in the volume as almost as a mountain climber, my peaks. And Fantastic Four wasn't a peak in that sense because it isn't commercially recognizable. The story has a huge following. So it's sort of grown into a high point. But, one has to deal with this likelihood of disappointment from a very early age as an actor. And this was just this colored in the whole circle. It was all disappointment. There really wasn't much left, except we became fodder for the business to be done. We were good enough that Roger said, I got drive-ins. We can release this movie. And so Bernd Eichinger probably said that to somebody at Fox, and they were afraid of losing Christopher Columbus, that they coughed up with $2 million. Who knows? Roger got his, Bernd got ours, and we got a credit and maybe some Comic-Con appearances, which is probably what we would have got had the film come out anyway, because the special effects, the whole genre wasn't ready yet. I mean, there was no such thing as Wesley Snipes' Black Panther. There was no such thing as James Cameron's Spider-Man. Yes, they were hoped for, but it was a long time until they came around. So you look at it that way, and we never would have had a chance to audition for these parts, to make this film, unless it had been a ruse. So I'm glad that other people bet on me. Roger Corman bet on me. Bernd Eichinger bet on me. And it was good enough for them to say, look, we can release this film and it'll be a disappointment. So what? So I don't think it was that emotionally disappointing to any of us. We're quite close, Rebecca and Michael Bailey Smith and Joseph Culp and I. I've done audiobooks. I produce audiobooks, and they gave me the rights, the author for this book called Forsaken, which is the deep dive into it's the same story told 40 times about Fantastic Four. And I had Rebecca do her part. Joseph Culp came in and do his, and Jay did a few parts. And, they're very together people. There are no scars. And there weren't in the beginning. It's funny. Maybe it's like I was talking ad nauseum earlier about how seductive this business is and how corrupting it is. This is an example of how satisfying it was to be a part of this project.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to take a quick break. And we're back with Alex Hyde-White. We're going to dive into some of the guerrilla marketing techniques they use for Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. The other impression I got from it is when you guys learned that perhaps it wasn't going to get released or things were happening behind the scenes, the crew and all of you got together to really kind of make a push doing publicity for it. People came in, David and Eric Wurst, to do the music and paid for a lot of it themselves. And people would, after hours, steal a print and to finish it in post-production as much as they could. And then putting together the ill-fated Mall of America screening, ill-fated meaning it didn't happen. That type of passion was just like, that was amazing. That's why I was wondering, did it then change the way you saw the industry after or anything like that when you found out?
Well, no, it was, the Wurst brothers doing the movies, the technical creative aspects of it, I wasn't a part of because once I finished filming, I was done. But I did very early on, when we finished this film, I just knew I got to get out on the road here because I think Roger had set up something. There was an LA con and it was great reception. And we had a trailer shown. And so I said, wait a minute, I'm an actor with a film and a story to tell. And I can go out on the road and tell my point of view. Rebecca came and Jay with us. Michael Bailey Smith and I traveled to New York with the Thing head, with the stunt head of the Thing, which I still have. That optic nerve made. John and Everett, the late John Bulich and Everett Burrell, who became famous special effects makeup people, Babylon 5 and whatnot. And I took the show on the road, and Roger inspired that kind of creativity. It was Roger has a very unique place in film history, not as a user or an abuser, even although he's known for never losing money and, never really spending money. But the list of Roger Corman alumni are some of the finest storytellers in the business. And it's because they were championed at a time in their life, and they were back, they were satisfied. And once the conventional aspect of, okay, here's a pretty cheap movie, and don't expect that it's going to be a hit because you were there for the 28 days and it should have been a 60-day shoot. I mean, come on. So there's a reality to that. I said, but that doesn't matter. If there's an audience out there, and I found very early on, let's take this out. And again, this is what the old actor managers, even before Olivier's day, before my dad's day, this was the version. They'd create a show, they'd take it out in the provinces and find an audience. And so I went to Bill Bromley, who was running Roger's company, and I said, hey, I've got some friends in New York and get me some press. I've been in touch with a comic book store. They can host me. And we don't have any, I'm not asking you for money, because they pay me an appearance fee at the comic book stores, which would cover my nut, $500 or $300, and I do a couple of them. How about some pictures? Oh, we can give you pictures. They give me 1,000 prints to go on the road, because it was marketing. Roger Corman still marketing Roger Corman, and Fantastic Four was a great vehicle. So I could market Alex Hyde-White. I could market Reed Richards. I could say, what's going to happen to the film? Hey, we got it. And we even got so far, and it was me and Jim Moore. I hired Jim Moore, the publicity guy. It was him who came up with the Mall of America. Heck, we even had an invite to be in the Rose Parade that year because it was like Journey to the Moon or something. They all thought Fantastic Four was this big thing. And you know what? It kind of was. Because it was more than just the sum of its parts was, like I say, it was a movie, an easily forgettable film. You can see that now when judged by the way that filmed entertainment is judged. But throw all of that out. This movie is like a 100-year-old turtle. Hey, look at that turtle. And after 100 years, damn, that's a 100-year-old turtle. He looks the same, but he's more important now because there's nothing else like him. So there's a good one.
That's funny. It's on YouTube. I mean, I think it got a huge life on YouTube. What we talked about.
Is it? If Disney wasn't so messed up now that they own everything under God's green earth, they just put this out there, putting out all sorts of crap. Put this on a B-roll or something, and on the B-side of something. And the original, never before seen Fantastic Four, the original, but the negative was destroyed. But no, we found one.
Yeah, Disney Plus.
Why
it's
not?
not like they can't squeeze it in there, right?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. You deserve it. It's an enjoyable watch, and look, for $1 million, I mean, you couldn't even get John Krasinski to walk into the room for $1 million these days. So, I mean, it's amazing.
Apparently, I guess he must not have liked the room once he walked in. He's done, I think. They called me, the Hollywood Reporter called me in last May and said, hey, what do you think about John Krasinski being Reed Richards? And we ended up doing a whole big article in Hollywood Reporter, and it ended up being about me and my book because the guy was terrific. It was good timing. And, I just said, hey, what am I going to say? I mean, John Krasinski is a storyteller. He's a good filmmaker. It'd be great. You need a storyteller to play Reed Richards. But the trouble with the Fantastic Four movies, the ones after ours, I mean, ours was, almost like meant to be bad, and it ended up being not so bad for $1 million. The other ones, they had no real moral center. They had no real purpose. They ended up trying to be showpieces. My 2 cents, it's a Fantastic Four, just like the Beatles were four. But you have to have a point of view. You have to have a Lennon and McCartney that create something. And you can't minimize Reed. And I felt that Jon Griffith, the Welsh actor, that they didn't give him a chance to carry the film as a leading man. You got to throw in a touch of Captain Kirk. Imagine Star Trek, as great as Star Trek is, and it succeeded in many different incarnations through the years, good and bad, who cares? But imagine the original Star Trek without Shatner as Kirk, parody and all, okay? In a way, that's what I think that our Fantastic Four has. It has this dysfunctional lead character just trying to be the nicest guy in the world. And everyone else is color, Susan, Johnny, and they played their parts so beautifully. And I think the trouble with, once the studio took over, trying to make the Fantastic Four a commercial hit was that they sort of sacrificed charisma. They didn't have a leading role to carry the film. Film has to have a center.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to cross my fingers, multiverse, going to bring you back. For even if like Secret Wars are like, I mean, it'd be the best nod. Get you like Nicholas Hammond, like all the different, old characters from Marvel past.
Nicholas Hammond. Yeah, he was what?
Spider-Man.
The Wall Street Journal, funnily enough, the Wall Street Journal is they have a podcast that they contacted me and did a pre-interview. They're doing a 4-part series, I think, on Marvel before it became Marvel. And it focuses on that period you talked about in the sort of late 80s to the early 90s. And they're interviewing me, Nick Hammond, and one other fella, the Punisher, I think, or something. I can't remember. But that's interesting, because that's business. That's Marvel. And part of my promotional tour for Fantastic Four, I was lucky. I was in New York at a fight or something, Madison Square Garden, with a friend of mine, a journalist who wrote for the Post. And 2 seats from me was a lady named Heidi who worked at Marvel. And just coincidental. And so, by the end of the 3rd round or whatever, she says, why don't you come over? And I ended up going to the bullpen and meeting the president of Marvel, a fellow named Terry Stewart. And I'm on the phone with the Wall Street Journal people, and my son, who's a pretty good researcher, he was on the phone as well. He looked it up. And sure enough, Avi Arad took over Marvel Films in the summer of 93, or in like September of 93. And I go, well, no, this was like March or April of 93. And it was a guy named Terry. And he go, oh, yeah. So Marvel was a small company on the verge of bankruptcy. And the current president was, he wasn't going to be there much longer. Not that any of them said that. It didn't matter. I was there in the big one room or big floor of an office building that was Marvel. They were making the comics and they were doing the thing. That was Marvel. What a story that I look forward to how they do that, because from that germ of, and then Ron Perelman, a New York investor, ended up buying it. Now look at them now. I mean, they're so successful that people don't even have to see their movies anymore.
I think they got too successful. It's become like homework to try and keep up with everything.
The first Robert Downey film as Iron Man, I thought was really good.
Great.
And then I started, I think Wonder Woman was good. I haven't, I'm not in touch with them all. I see bits and pieces. I think, hey, that Thor movie, I don't know if that's DC or Marvel, but they look entertaining. But a lot of those movies, we're so used to it now, they just look fake.
Yeah, there was definitely more heart in the earlier ones. There's
fantastical plots.
Yeah.
So our little dysfunctional amoeba of a film that's still in its petri dish, locked away somewhere, it's a nice story.
It's a wonderful story, and I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad it's something that kind of keeps, it's a great topic of conversation. It's a fascinating.
It is to those who are interested in it. And that the entertainment business is about satisfying your audience, just like it used to be 100 years ago. It doesn't matter if something is a global hit or universally praised. In fact, you could go, there's a school of thought that says, if everybody likes it, you didn't do good enough. Look at Jordan Peele is such an exception now because, he writes complicated stories. And he's the nicest guy in the world. The layers of his storytelling are very impressive, like Spielberg in a way. And, I was witness firsthand for a few days the summer before last that Universal is treating him, they're giving him all the backing that they gave young Spielberg at around 1941 times and Close Encounters times, and to nurture him. And I think Jordan is a wonderful filmmaker, a wonderful storyteller, great writer.
He's amazing.
He's an exception. There are not many like him right now. Taylor Sheridan a bit on television, I suppose. But Jordan's an actor. He's not a control freak. My little part was on paper. It was one thing, and I've been around for a couple of days. By the time I got to do my scene with Daniel, I kind of asked Jordan, can you just let me do one? And he just looked at me and he said, wow, okay, let's do it that way. And it was a great example of collaboration. And the DP was Hoyt van Hoytema is his name. He's only Christopher Nolan's DP, for God's sake. Like I said, they shot on 65 mil, which the film cans are huge and they run quick. So it was a lot of time they were putting on new film cans. And I went up to Hoyt at the end of day one. I says, you shot Tenet, right? He goes, yeah. I go, fuck. He goes, what? I go, fuck. They tell me that people say that movie sort of plays the same way back to front as it would. And he goes, yeah, I could see that. Whoa. And then, okay, Alex, action. And there's Hoyt and his dolly shot. And I'm a part of his shot. And, that's joyous. That's my life in film and TV. And then, fortunately it made it into the book because it took me a couple of years to write the book. I'm still going. And it is moments like that when I can work with people who are so good that they don't have to tell you how good they are. They'll let you help make them good in that moment. And that is rare. That is rare air. That's a peak. That's my K2 or Kilimanjaro. I just, I'm thankful that I have my health. And now that I'm out of Hollywood, I think I got a nice Atlanta agent. They're terrific that I didn't have before. I'm up for lots of stuff. I got 2 movies coming out, small films, little accidental films. I feel that I'm in the volume still.
You're in the volume. You're going to stay in the volume. And thanks for spending some of that volume with me. I appreciate you hanging out with me.
Hey, you guys who do this, man, you're the town criers. It's a lot of work. I appreciate it. You give guys like us mouthpieces, and I appreciate it. I saw your list of people, some very lovely names. I know a few of them, and happy to be a part of it.
I'm very happy to have you a part of it. Thank you so much. It was awesome.
God bless you. Thank you very much indeed. And enjoy Detroit, if such a thing is possible.
It is very possible to enjoy Detroit, everyone. How amazing was Alex Hyde-White? Oh my gosh. Definitely check out his book. It's awesome. In the volume, there's a link in my show notes. You can check that out. If you haven't seen Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. It's on YouTube. You can check it out there. So many great stories. That was a lot of fun. Can't believe the interview's over. That means the episode's over. These go by so quick. So Alex was the original Reed Richards. John Wesley Shipp was here, The Flash. Nicholas Hammond, Spider-Man. Eric Allen Kramer, Thor from the Incredible Hulk movie. Burt Ward, Robin. I hope I'm not missing any. This is a place where all the superheroes come to hang out. Huge thanks to Alex Hyde-White. And of course, a huge thanks to all of you for coming back week after week. I appreciate ya, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.